So guys, thanks so much for joining me on the panel. I think one of the things that makes me so comfortable with this is that we're all pretty much in this together, right? It might seem altruistic, but we're all trying to push the open banking industry forward together. Should we do a quick round of introductions about who we are? So maybe to you first, Eloise.
Sure. So I'm Eloise, I'm head of product at Bud. We're Fintech, who are an open banking company, but really we're trying to solve the problem of transactional intelligence. So lots of our big clients use us with the transactional data they already have, and they're trying to make sense of it. They're trying to build better services, whether that's more efficient lending or kind of more personalized customer-facing services. So we're kind of looking to make that technology kind of accessible and usable to all of these different fintechs who are really going to drive a lot of this innovation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Great. Jan Van Vano, head of industry strategy at Tink. Tink is an open banking technology platform. We got acquired by Visa in March 2022 for $2.2 billion US. What we do is provide the rails and brains of open banking, meaning that we enable for the access to account information, as well as the initiation of transactions between accounts, and then we add to that the intelligence, right? So the brains of open banking. So we create use cases that help both the large and small, so big banks such as NatWest, as well as smaller fintechs, in order to create a new world of finance, a new generation of financial solutions that are going to, basically help their customers with getting control.
It's super interesting because you use the word use case there, and I guess that's where we fit in. So my name's James Bryce Lind. I am head of strategic development, I think is my title, at Minna, and we are a part of the open banking ecosystem. So what Minna does is we're a subscription management solution in embedded finance, if you want to use a buzzword, where we basically sell to banks and allow their consumers to take action on managing their subscriptions, like a Netflix or Spotify, directly from within the app. And I think what brings us all together here is the fact that we're all part of the same ecosystem, which is open banking. Jan, in today's conversation, you had some really interesting stats around open banking adoption. Maybe you can expand on that for the viewers at home.
Sure. So earlier actually in June, the Open Banking Implementation Entity, which is the organization funded by the 9 largest banks in the UK to create open banking standards, API standards, disclosed that the current count of open banking users in the UK market is 6.1 million. So 6.1 million monthly active users of account information services and payment initiation services. Now, I think that's obviously a great sort of point of success for where open banking is today in the UK market. But I think, and one of the points I expanded on during the panel was this is only the beginning. So
yeah, it's super interesting, and maybe we can divert away from what we were speaking about on stage and get a bit more nitty gritty. Why do you think the UK's rollout of open banking has been more successful than the EU's?
Important question. So, in the UK, open banking is not just a financial regulation. In the UK, open banking is an antitrust remedy enforced by the competition authorities. And this antitrust remedy has put specific requirements for the 9 largest banks in the UK in particular around basically the APIs, the dedicated interfaces that they produce for the market. And there was scrutiny over the user experiences, creating the most frictionless user experience possible for the completion of a strong customer authentication, which is required to allow TPPs, companies such as Bud and Tink, in order to retrieve information to provide a valuable fintech service. Now, the UK market has done an exceptional job at setting an example for banks all over the world in terms of what open banking could look like. But there are, obviously, we still have a way to go. So we think things can be even better, and we continue to work hard to make sure that we collaborate with the banks to get it even better than where it is today.
Yeah, building on what you said, I agree. It's really the enforceability and accountability of having an organisation such as the OBIE. They're breathing down the bank's necks, making sure that these mandated APIs are adhered to. I think that's why we see ourselves getting faster adoption, unlike the EU, which might be a bit more fragmented. I note some of the fastest movers around open banking globally are actually in Brazil, because they had a similar rollout to what the UK did in Australia, although they're a bit far behind. You also touched on consent and gathering consent, which it's an art. So, Eloise, as a part of Bud's approach to this, tell me, what are some learnings that you've had around the consent gathering process? What can you tell us about how you've taken on learnings from working some of your partners to optimise this?
So I think number one learning is just the value proposition, is that customers and consumers are very happy to go through these types of flows if there's something in it for them, right? So just blanket consent or just having a general journey where it's not clear kind of what they're signing up for or why they would share their data in that way is not going to work. And what the industry is really crying out for are specific use cases like subscription management. If you can tell the user that, hey, you've got a customer who needs to reduce their monthly outgoings. We at Bud can do things like identify you don't have enough money to cover your bills this month. You're about to go into your overdraft, and if you layer up these journeys based on real insights that you've got from the data, and kind of offer consumers better ways to actually take action, then that's going to be the thing that actually drives adoption and makes that value proposition worthwhile for consumers.
Yeah, I love that term. Back at CK, it was the value exchange. What am I getting for connecting my open banking account? And I think that's what excites me. Like I mentioned on stage, subscription management is pain that every consumer feels. So it's not just lending or a nice to have in PFM. So super interested to see, especially in this current climate, how far we can go together as an ecosystem. Jan, your prediction was super interesting when it came to consent. More recently, the extension of the 90-day consent window. Could you tell us a little bit more about how you think that's going to push the industry further?
Sure. So in the UK market, the Financial Conduct Authority, the FCA, has made amendments to what they call the regulatory technical standards, which basically specify the conditions for access to accounts, as well as the requirements for strong customer authentication. And in the amendments, the FCA has clarified that going forward, account information service providers, so the fintechs that are providing insights into one's transactional information, or overlaying that transactional information with different use cases and value propositions, that they will now need to reconfirm consent every 90 days, but their bank will not be allowed to revoke the access to their accounts. And this means that now, going forward, personal finance management apps, subscription management solutions, these solutions that generally rely on, let's say, ongoing consent, become a lot easier to use because all the user needs to do is to engage with the app. They do not need to perform multi-factor authentication against all of their banks that they're integrating within a single interface going forward. And that's what gets us quite excited for the UK market. And so the deadline for this is the 30th of September. And we want to make sure, of course, that by then the entire ecosystem is ready to go forward with their value propositions.
Super interesting. So it's more like a prompted opt-out than anything. I'd love to dive deeper into that, but probably now is not the time or place. Look, we've been talking for a while now, so why don't we wrap things up with, what do you think the viewers at home would love to hear from us as a parting piece?
I think this technology has come on leaps and bounds, and I think open banking, I think, across the board, we've always just seen it as an enabler technology, and it's just got to be at a point where it allows you to build these use cases on top. But really, the exciting thing is, once you solve the problem of how do you make use of the data, once you've got it, how do you take all of this messy data and find the information, find the insights out of it? That's a non-trivial problem you need to solve. Invested for years and years in machine learning that deals with this transactional data. And then it's about making these tools more widely accessible. So I would encourage product teams who are thinking about what could we do with this type of transactional data is go and try it. Go into a sandbox and get your hands on the APIs. Go and see what you can do with test data. You might already have transactional data that you can use in these platforms, and that's where the innovation is going to come from, at the point where we're not talking about open banking, but we're talking about more intelligent, personalized financial services.
Super interesting. Jan?
Yeah, so I mean, Tink has always been in the business of, solving concrete problems for some of the largest financial institutions in the world, but also providing the platform capabilities for the smaller fintechs who don't have the same deep pockets to get started. And I think looking at where we've come so far with open banking and looking at the recent changes that we see in the ecosystem, and basically this industry has a tailwind, right? So I think it's going to be incredibly exciting to see all the new types of applications that are going to emerge as the access to account information services becomes more available, and businesses will be able to retain their users after 3 months, and we're going to get a lot of creative solutions such as loyalty schemes and carbon footprint calculations, and in addition to the subscription management and brokering of other financial services. So I'm actually very excited, especially seeing what this fintech ecosystem is going to bring into the market.
Yeah, it's interesting, the time that we're in right now with open banking. It's very much open banking. What's the metric? 6%, 7% adoption right now. As we're going to push forward, we're going to get 10, 15, 20. Unfortunately, there's going to be a position where we're not looking at that number anymore because we've achieved it. We will know because we've been in the trenches pushing this forward, but it won't be a matter of, adoption is at 25%. To your point, it's an enabler. So it's just going to be, here's this cool new use case. Here's 3 or 4 alternative data sources that are being combined into the ultimate global credit score, as an example. Open banking can feed into that, but it's not built directly on it. So super excited to be a part of this industry, and thank you so much for joining me for our second stage today.